March 22nd, Littleton Conservation Commission meeting at 7:30, and I guess we have to go through the spiel. Amy, do you want to?
All right. The town of Littleton began conducting remote participation Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19th, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns relating to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by town clerk. Those concerns were supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by town council. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in discussion and sharing information during a public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. People that join the Zoom meeting are set so their microphones are muted. If you called in by phone, please use *6 to mute or unmute your phone. So the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion. We ask that people who join keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you called in by phone, dial *9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chairperson of the raised hands, and the chairperson will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute, then state their name and address. After speaking, we request the participant return their microphone back to mute. Over to you.
Okay. I'd like to know whether we can approve the minutes for March 8th. Has anybody got any omissions or corrections?
Amy, I just have some on page 1 in section 2, and they're just grammatical, so I can send them on to you. One is the word depth, which is supposed to be deep. One is vegetation is supposed to be has, and just adding a word not. So I can send those to you. And then on page 2, section 3, the topo is pretty flat, and the garage was just, so just is just misspelled. Those are 2 that I have.
Anybody else got any omissions or corrections?
I had one on section 1, actually a couple on section 1. I wasn't sure in the second sentence whether the regulations you refer to are stormwater regulations. Maybe clarify which regulations you're talking about here, whether it's our regulations or the stormwater regulations, or which. And also, after you state that there was a discussion about what would happen to projects that are already in the works. And I thought she also responded that projects that have already submitted their applications by the time the bylaw is passed would not be subject to the new requirements. I thought that was what she said. And maybe you could add a sentence about that.
Sure. But there's also the discussion that they can't sit there forever.
Right.
Yeah,
And that she was going to go back to try to tighten up the date. So I think the date wasn't finalized as far as what would be grandfathered.
Yeah, I think did we toss around like a 1-year date that we didn't really want it to kind of go out?
No, languish.
Yep.
Mm.
It's interesting because it would be nice if we could start almost, well, I suppose it's going to get adopted soon anyway, so, okay.
If there's no more discussion, somebody want to make a motion to accept the?
I had one more quick thing.
Okay.
Sorry, in section 2, the sentence says septic system and well are in the 50 to 100 foot buffer, but it's, and I think you say it later on, but the building was going to be on town water, so I just struck and well. I don't think there's a well proposed.
But is that pipe that's there a well?
It's a modern well. I mean, I thought they said that it might be a groundwater modern well. I looked at it during our site walk, and it looked like it was kind of a slotted,
like a piezometer. Kyle, did you think it looked like a piezometer? Because that's what it looked like to me.
It had that look to it with the type of PVC. It was kind of like a prefabbed piezometer.
Yeah, it would be nice to note that in make sure that they're in the notes. And
We'll tell you what, they're here so they can clarify that when they come on.
I thought they stated in the last meeting that it was a groundwater level well, not a drinking water well. But anyway.
Okay.
They
Yeah,
can
that's what they
confirm
thought
that.
it was.
Yeah.
But they weren't sure. They did say that, Anna, but they said that they weren't 100% sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so if they're not sure, I think we should call it out that it is some type of monitoring well or well.
Anybody else?
I move that we accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
Oh, those, Cal, you want to do your thing?
Sure. Carl Melberg, aye. James Pickard,
James Pickett, aye.
Sarah Seward,
Sarah Seward, aye.
Julie Rupp,
Julie Rupp, aye.
Andrew Samarco,
Andrew Smarco, aye.
and Kyle Maxfield.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
That's unanimous.
Okay. Guess we move on. Informal discussion of 7 Fraser Street. You got
Good
something? Somebody?
Good evening, everyone.
Can we add some things to the administrative discussion list?
Yes, if you're going to, you should do it now.
One is Amy's update on selectmen's meeting that she just had, and I would like to look at the, if we have time and we can do it later, some of the continued hearings that are published to see if there's anything that we can kind of get them going on. Okay, not Amy, but the applicant. Those would be my 2 updates.
Okay. Do you want to deal with Fraser Street or you want to move on with that?
No, I think we can start with that. Mr. Sharma is here, and I think he has a couple plans he wanted to do, and because it's all in the 50-foot, I thought it'd be worth him getting an initial reaction from you all before he tries to apply.
Yeah, hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Good evening, everyone. My name is Manoj Sharma, and I'm a resident of 7 Fraser Street. And this summer, I'm thinking of doing 2 improvements to my property, and both of them have impact on the conservation. So that's why I'm here. The 2 projects are, one is a paved surface to the north of the house, and the second one is a deck expansion on the back of the house. So I'll present, I have 4 slides. I'll present them quickly, and then hopefully I can get valuable feedback from this committee. So this is the first project, proposed paved surface to the north of the house. Here is the wetland area. This is kind of the arch that is a 30 feet wetland buffer. And there's a post here, which is about 11 feet from this corner of the house. The corner itself is 40 feet from the wetlands. So the proposal that I have here is to make this paved area, which will be about 10 feet deep here, which is around a feet or so short of the this post, and then it arches along with this, the wetland buffer arch, obviously away from that, and then this shortest edge is 10 feet and about 20 feet deep, and the total width is the width of the house, which is about 27 feet. So the same plan, if you look at on the map, will look somewhat like this. So this is the edge of the wetlands. Thank you, Amy, for providing me this plan. I really appreciate it. The corner of the house is about 40 feet, and there's this post here, which is 11 feet from this corner. So this proposed edge is about 10 feet, and then you can see the rest of the shape is farther. So this is the closest edge of that paved. It'll be some sort of a stone paver, and I'm looking forward to get some feedback on that as well. The next project is proposed expansion or extension of the deck on the back of the house. Again, this side is the wetlands. This corner is about 40 feet from the wetland, and here's the post again, which is about 11 feet from this corner. I'm proposing to extend the deck all the way to this corner of the house with a post that will be dug here, which is approximately 6 feet from this retainer wall, which is already there. So this should be well within the actual bounds of this existing retainer wall. And So if you look at the same thing on the map, it looks somewhat like this. Again, this is the proposed extension of the deck. This is the farthest corner of the deck, which, as I said, would be about 6 feet from this existing retainer wall. And from the wetlands, I would think it would be around 38 or so feet, considering that this corner is about 40 feet. So that's kind of, those are the two projects that I have here for feedback. I'll really appreciate feedback from this committee.
Amy, do you want to share with everyone where this is on the locus so people understand what house this is?
Yeah, so this is Durkee Farm, and just to the north or just above it, that's the farm pond area.
So this is the waterfront house.
One of them, yes.
Yeah, I was going to ask actually what, how long has it been since they installed the pipe for drainage in this area? And do we, I guess I would want to know, do we have enough information to know that the area is not going to flood?
I think it's a great question. I don't think that we've been out of drought in order to see if that is going to flood. And I feel like this particular house, we made exceptional accommodations as well.
Yep.
I've been here 3 years. I moved in 2018, and when I moved in, it was pretty much close to touching the house. But since then, 2018 is when they did some work, and then since then, I haven't really seen any water coming close to the property.
Right, because we're in a drought.
There's been some very wet times since they put that pipe in.
Yeah, and they're supposed to still be monitoring it
Correct.
as well, right? I mean, we're at 3 years now, so in theory, we should have some reports from.
And honest to God, I don't know if you want to get hung up on that right now, or the
Okay.
meeting's going to go. way
Yeah,
off track.
forever.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's no question Durkee Farm's got some work
Right.
to do.
I think it comes back to the question, are you willing to make accommodations on all of Durkee Farm?
Right. Well, and I'm wondering too, didn't we have something where we wanted it to be put in the deed that, this was the building envelope and, just so people knew when they purchased a property that the builder was already threading the needle with respect to the wetlands? I don't know when that.
Yeah, I don't know if that was, it wasn't before Durkee. It may have been during.
No, it was Durkee, and I will admit not all the owners came in, but they were all supposed to come in if they bought the house before the certificate of compliance was issued, so that they understood what was going on up there.
So
And
what,
the deck is within the 50, although he could cut it in half and be outside the 50. And actually, when he first came in, the area off of the slider out back was going to be gravel, and now it's maybe paved or pavers. And I just wasn't sure how you saw that. That's entirely in the 50.
Right, and you're not that far away from conservation land as well, habitat.
Yeah.
So do we know if that statement that Julie was referring to was put into there?
Right, but that doesn't, I mean, that's all well and good, but you're still working within the 50 feet.
Yeah. No, I understand, but I was trying to.
So, right, but we got, I mean, and we can come back to that. I think to let the applicant know, like, I think he's here to see if this would be agreeable.
Yeah. So I agree. I mean, he's within the 50 for both actions.
Right, and we've already made accommodations on this house.
And just to clarify, I'd say for the applicant, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding sometimes with the words. It's a 100-foot buffer zone and a 50-foot no disturb zone. He's referring to other spaces as buffer, and it gets a little unclear for folks. So just to reiterate that.
Yep, thank you.
Understood. So, I mean, maybe I can let's tease this apart. Maybe just so I can understand. There are two separate projects. Which one do I actually have at least which one I have a shot at. I understand the pavement may be a far stretch. This one, as I said, the post will be within the existing retainer wall for the deck extension. So what's the feedback on that? There's already a retainer wall, and the post will be made 6 feet within that.
Is there a plan to put a roof on it or screen it in at some point to change the drainage?
No.
Because I think,
Right, but then you're still dealing with pervious versus impervious underneath, which helps that grass grow and keep from erosion.
yeah, so
I think the point is that that wall, that retaining wall was put in by the builder as part of the approved house.
Yes.
And what the applicant, the person seeking to do this work is looking for is additional work, and it doesn't, see, the thing is that I want to address that retaining wall. It doesn't really matter. I mean, the retaining wall's there. It was there when the builder put it in. Any permits were given at that particular point. If the project's within the 50, it doesn't matter if there's a retaining wall there or not. It's just within the 50, so we have no build within the 50. We've really kept to that point.
If he brought it to the first retaining wall, you would be right on the 50-foot line.
No, you'd be on the 40-foot line, right?
No, 50, according to
You
the,
use the other one. Yeah, that
You mean
wall,
this
right.
one?
yeah.
That would
The
put
house
you
is at the
outside
40,
The house is at the 40.
and that wall looks like it's at 46.
Yeah, this is 6
Well,
feet.
I don't know if you want to get into the details, because there's nothing really in front of you.
Yeah.
I would assume that he would be welcome to come in and try for the entire deck, with the possibility he might get pushed back to be entirely outside the 50 or somewhere in between.
Correct.
I guess that's about as close we can give you an answer.
And the pavement outside the slider, I saw is more difficult.
Right. Okay.
Okay,
We got to
That's-
keep going.
understood.
Yeah. And Amy, did you point him in the direction of the requirements for like a waiver to build in the 50? Because there's,
Yeah.
it's a pretty high bar. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there was certainly opportunity there below the wall to do plantings and stuff if need be, but it is his property.
Okay.
Okay, I guess we gotta move on.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, everyone.
All right, we'll be talking.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you.
Invasive species control and permit. What's that one, Amy?
This, we probably don't want to get into it, or maybe we can kick it to the end.
Okay.
There's sort of two things. One is that in general, I was wondering if we could establish some thresholds for invasive species management that would not require a permit from the Conservation Commission. That if it meets whatever the threshold we set up, then it would certainly need to come in for, kind of approval and discussion, but might not need to actually file an RDA. I think that is either discussion for later tonight or
Okay,
not, but otherwise, the other piece of it is that Rick is ready to tackle that porcelainberry over at Crowley Woods. And I flagged the wetlands out there this weekend, and there's just a couple little bumps of wetlands between the road and the wall that's back in the woods. And he should be able to get there and tackle the porcelainberry without getting into the flagged wetland pieces of it. And Rick can describe more of what he wants to do. But again, I wasn't sure if you want to see a permit for that or if he can do it.
what's the board's feeling?
What is going to be the method of removal?
Our biggest problem is preventing people from going to seed because it's spread by birds, and it's a extremely aggressive vine, and it's the only place that I know of at the moment in town. But we'll be doing some advertising, trying to get people to report any other locations. At the moment, we were applying for a grant just to clear the area, get in there, dig it up from the roots. And whatnot.
We're having a hard time hearing you, Rick. It's like
Is it
wind or
hard?
something. There you go. Thanks.
Is that better?
That's
Yeah.
much better.
I don't know what I did, but anyway, I've been going in and cutting out some of the brush. I would try to remove it so we can move around in there. I think ultimately it may require some herbicide application. We just don't know how successful we'll be up in the beginning, but it's just really important not to let it go to seed again. I think it has been going to seed for the last few years, and but
Do you plan to pull it down, or you just plan to cut it off and have it die?
unfortunately, a lot of it's in dead trees that it's already killed the trees, and I'm trying to pull it down. I'm going to pull the tree down on top of me. So a lot of it, I think I'm just going to cut off high. I'll see if I can pull it down.
No, I just was curiosity as to whether how much you're gonna disturb it, just to shake any of the leaves or what have you, what makes it regenerate out of it.
Well, we certainly want you to be careful foremost, Rick.
Right. No, yeah, I think I'll be working with some volunteers from the New England Forestry Foundation as well, and maybe trail people. Depends on how difficult this becomes. We really don't know what we're up against.
Rick, are you using an iPad by chance or a tablet?
No, I just have a.
Are you grabbing the microphone somewhere? Because it sounds like you're holding on to the mic.
Oh, I could be. Maybe if I just raise my hands up and is that better?
Perfect.
I
So
don't know where
let's circle back and see what the original request is, Amy, of the commission.
So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, is it okay for them to go in up to the wetland? So, work from 0 to 100, basically doing manual cutting in there of not only the porcelain, but there's also a bunch of winged euonymus in there and rose, and that should all come out. So it would be volunteers with hand tools up to and including, is it still a possibility, Rick, that someone will be able to get there with a brush hog and just eat the rose bush down?
I'm not sure we're going to go. That was what we had applied to a grant for,
Yeah.
but I think I was in there, and I may have been in the areas that you had flagged, but I've been cutting off Norway maple, which is all through that area, a couple of feet off the ground, and ultimately we'll flush cut it so that we can just bring a mower in and mow any young stuff that's coming up. But the whole area is full of invasives.
Okay. I feel comfortable making a motion if it's hand removal for that area, and I appreciate the volunteers if they're so inclined to go do that. Be careful of poison ivy.
And I
to bring in a mower also, just to.
I think so. Is it dry enough to bring in a mower, Rick?
It is.
Okay.
It's very walkable right now. You can't even tell that it's wet. No, it's only Amy's brilliance has spotted it.
Okay.
Could I add to your motion, Sarah, just that
Sure.
it'd probably be, as long as the board gets notified that this activity is going on?
Sure, and you can have a stop and start. So perhaps, Rick, when you're going to start, let Amy know. And if it looks like it's going to be ongoing, just let us know that.
I've already started,
Okay.
and I've been in the dry areas. As I was walking through, it's pretty hard not to.
I think what James is referring, if you're going to have a lot of people there, just so that we know.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's going to be myself and probably a couple of volunteers from the Forestry Foundation. It's going to be small
Okay.
groups probably.
It's just if we get a complaint from somebody that Amy can refer to that we know the board knows about. That's what I'm leading
I think
up.
that would be great, Rick, and maybe just
Sure.
log what days you're there and how many hours, things like that, just so we have that for record. That would be great.
Let me just say that the way I'm dealing with it is putting in a little bit of time every day if I can.
Yep. Okay,
I don't have I'm working on too many projects.
sure.
So literally, I might be there for an
Yeah.
hour.
That's
Every
fine. I
day.
think just if we're logging a lot of man hours, it'll help us for the historic value to know. So the motion includes my motion and James's addition.
Here's a second.
Second,
Guess Carl, you gotta do your thing.
All right, Cal Melberg, aye. James Pickard,
James Pickett, aye.
Sarah Seward,
Sarah Seward, aye.
Julie Rupp,
Julie Rupp, aye.
Andrew Samarco,
Andrew Samarco, aye.
Kyle Maxfield,
Al Maxield, aye.
unanimous.
Okay, we need to go on to, we got a public hearing. I see it's about 7:56 right now.
Well, thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Rick.
Correct.
Good luck, Rick.
Public hearing, notice of intent, 5 Cottage Way, U-2690, Mass DEP file number 2049XX. Construction of a new septic system. Is somebody gonna speak to this?
Hello, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. For the public record, my name is David Cowell. I'm a wetland scientist with Hancock Associates here on behalf of the applicant. We filed the notice of intent for 5 Cottage Way and request to build a subsurface septic system. 5 Cottage Way is a waterfront property fronting Fort Pond. If I have the ability to share screen, I could pull this up on my computer. Let's do this. Share. All right. So let's filter back and forth. So 5 Cottage Way, this is one of the waterfront cottages fronting Fort Pond. Fort Pond is located at one of the property's edge. We have delineated the bank of that feature. We've color coordinated this figure for presentation. And what the green is, the green represents the 50-foot local setback, the no disturb zone. The polka dot is the 100-foot buffer zone. And the existing house spanning away from the pond, you have an area that's 100-foot buffer zone, but then as you head west, there's an intermittent stream that bisects the property. And then he has land moving back towards Shagbark Drive. So in the existing condition, this is currently served with an unlined cesspool. It's an outhouse. So there's basically a hole in the ground that waste goes, and it just goes into that cesspool. What we're proposing to do is install a Title V compliant sewer septic system. By necessity, we're looking to site the system on the opposite side of an intermittent stream. So our request is to have a stream crossing this will have to be a force main that forces effluent upgradient to the system. And then on the opposite side of that stream, we found an area that infiltrates. We also are requesting some waiver from the 50-foot no disturb zone. We've managed to keep the leach field a minimum 50-foot setback as is required under Title V and local Board of Health. But the system would need to be mounded and elevated, and some of the tapered grading going away from where that mound would be by necessity would need to be within 50 feet of the stream. This didn't come easy to come up with this design. First and foremost, we looked for areas that would percolate or infiltrate, whereby we wouldn't need to do a stream crossing to move the effluent beyond it. Unfortunately, nothing on the house-facing side of the stream percolates. Nothing past the infiltration rates, and there's shallow ledge in there. We were able to find this area on the opposite side as you move up gradient and away from Fort Pond that percolates and infiltrates. And this is the only location that we found able to do that. The other thing we looked at too was in effort to avoid any necessary tapering grading was if we were able to move this further to the, well, the north arrow says this would be to the east. But what we have here is on the opposite side. I'm going to switch plans for a moment to the non-color coordinated plans. But there's a steep gradient slope that goes up in elevation. These are 1 foot contours that may be difficult to see at the scale at which you guys are observing it. But on the opposite side of it, there's a steep gradient slope that goes at 1 foot contour elevations that is prohibitive to, to construction, that it would require significantly more land alteration to do that. And it also turns into shallow ledge where we don't think that any of this area would infiltrate either. So that's one of the prohibitions that we have that put us in the location that we're in. So under our proposal, what we would do to mitigate for the crossing of the stream and mitigate for proposed alterations in the 50-foot no disturb zone is that, first of all, the force main, this would be a double lined force main as it goes through here. This would be put into a concrete caisson, affording secondary containment to a distance of, I think, 20 feet beyond the stream in either direction. Or 10 feet beyond in either direction. In terms of executing the stream crossing, we would propose to do this under a dry condition. This is an intermittent stream that's actually dry for prolonged periods of time. We would do this under dry condition. The crossing itself would be, no more than 24 to 48 hours to cut the trench, set the pipe, backfill it back to existing grades, and return the contours of the stream back to existing condition. Once that's done, we would propose a temporary crossing over the stream where we have a 12-inch culvert that would maintain flow, if there were flow, through the stream channel while we have the crossing in place. What we would propose to do is actually line the banks of the stream with a filter fabric, put the stone apron on top of it, which is the stone tracking or stone access apron, as equipment would get back there to excavate and put the subsurface sewer system in. And what that does by underlying the filter fabric first is that when you go to retrieve the stone, that the filter fabric actually tells you where to stop, where the ends of that contours are, and it prevents that stone from being mixed in to the substrate following construction. The project would have conventional erosion and sediment controls around the perimeter of the intermittent stream at the point of entry. And then in execution of the actual subsurface system itself, where this contoured grading is proposed, we can revegetate this with native species. I carried a native planting specification for a seed mix of herbaceous native wildflowers and forbs that would provide stabilization and ground cover. The only apprehension we would have was not putting native woody vegetation on there, anything that would have root structure that may compromise the integrity, such as shrubs and trees. But I think with the native seed mix, we can certainly revegetate this back to a natural state. That's it in summary. From an administrative standpoint, the Mass DEP file number hasn't been issued to date. We anticipated that this would be an opening hearing to get some feedback from the Conservation Commission, questions and answers. If the commission wanted to set up a site walk and a site visit, we'd be happy to do so prior to the next public hearing in this matter. And that's it in a brief summary. And with that, I'd be very happy to field any questions that the Conservation Commission has on the project.
I have a question. For an intermittent stream, I would assume that you have some idea of when it usually dries up, and therefore maybe a requirement of what time of year this is going to occur.
Yep, that's a good question, Anna. Thank you. Yeah, normally I wouldn't advise doing it in the springtime, which is peak rainfall, but anytime after June, July, August tend to be the driest periods of the year. I think what we would propose to do is have the contractor lined up to execute the work. We would monitor forecasts for any anticipated rainfall event and select the time as appropriate to do so under dry conditions. So that's certainly a condition that we would anticipate if the commission entertained issuing an order for this.
Anybody else?
I also didn't know what vegetation is where the septic system is planned for, what vegetation you're gonna have to remove, if any.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think if we were to have a site walk, it would be illustrative. It's fairly sparse in vegetation there now. I think there is some minor low-lying shrubs and vegetation, but it's pretty bony in there. There's no mature trees that I anticipate would need to be taken. If anything, there may be some low-lying shrubs sparse in there that I think a site walk may contextualize better.
I think probably until we have the site walk, it's kind of hard to visualize exactly what we're looking at. Is that something that can happen?
Yeah, quick question. How large is the septic system being cited for? Like 3 bedrooms or?
Oh, with me tonight on the call, we have Jacob Lemieux, who is the project engineer and the project manager on this on behalf of Hancock. Jacob, are you able to chime in on the capacity of the system?
Can you hear me?
Jacob,
Yep.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jacob Lemieux, for the record, with Hancock Associates. So the system here is designed for 3 bedrooms, so 330 gallons per day.
Any other upgrades on the lot in terms of house or anything else?
No,
Go ahead, Jacob.
there's a garage and a house existing, and then there's the existing cesspool, which is right next to a chunk of exposed ledge. So I don't imagine there's a whole lot of soil beneath it. But that's it for improvements on this site, except for uphill within the lot and at the top of the hill that's above the proposed septic system. There's a right of way with a access roadway that leads to all the lots down there on the edge of the water there. So this lot actually extends a good distance down towards Fort Pond Road. It gets very narrow down that direction and also very bony and hard to access past the right of way. But other than site improvements, I think that is basically all there is on the site.
So, hey, Dave, this is Carl.
Hey, Carl, how are you?
You good? So tell me a little bit about the intermittent stream. Does it basically just serve the wetland?
What do you mean? Does the stream or would our work disturb the
Yeah,
wetland?
there's the water traveling through the intermittent stream.
Yep.
Where does that water go?
It ultimately leads to Fort Pond itself.
Out.
It continues onto abutting properties, but ultimately that intermittent stream discharges to Fort Pond.
Okay, thanks.
I think James was asking if we want to set up a site walk. I think certainly.
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely need to do a site walk. I had a question just to confirm, is the house permanently occupied at the moment?
No, this is a seasonal residence. It's not a full-time residence.
Right.
It's a summer cottage.
Yep.
Yep.
And so is there like a kitchen sink, and where does that drain, and like how does all that work?
I don't know the floor plan on the inside. Jacob, are you aware of the floor plan and where existing plumbing in the house
I mean,
drains out to?
I guess, is there plumbing? I guess that's really the question.
Not that I'm aware of.
Right.
They do have water. I mean, there is a well.
This is the wellhead right here, yeah.
Right. That was why I was asking. So there's obviously water, but
It could potentially be going to an old gray water system, or, you know, some other ancient system that's been there since the house has been constructed.
So basically, you're gonna put all the water, fluent, and septage is all gonna go into this tank, right?
Yep. So this will handle all of the wastewater from the house, and we have a septic tank and also a pump chamber that'll be forced up the hill through.
Julie, that's a good question though. And I think we'd be happy to look into that and answer that by the next hearing.
When do the commissioners want to go out?
I could go out this week. It's
Yeah. I'm around.
I could potentially do this week, depending on when.
I'd also say you might have some members of the public who have comment. We did get a letter like around 3:00 today, which I did send to you. You might not have even seen it yet. And another email shortly, which
Okay.
you haven't been able to review either.
Right, so we can take that into advisement and read prior to the site walk or the next meeting. So let's follow up with if there's a good day. I can do Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm getting a vaccine on Thursday. I don't know how I'm gonna feel on Friday.
I have my cold in like a year,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure if anyone wants to be around me.
I can normally do weekdays if it's before 4 p.m. I normally pick up my children at 4 o'clock in Marlboro. But I'll concede to whatever the commission does. If it needs to be that time, I can make arrangements with my wife to coordinate pickup. Similarly, on Saturday mornings, I normally have a conflict until 11 a.m. in the Saturday mornings. Sundays I have pretty wide open.
Seems like the board has been hitting 5:30 at night. That's what I've been seeing, so.
Oh, yeah, it is staying laid out longer. That's,
7 o'clock.
yep. I could make a 5:30 site walk, but I may have a 6-year-old and 3-year-old in tow, which they tend to be happy to just run around while dad talks.
I guess that's up to the board members. What do you want to do, folks?
Do you guys want to try and do Wednesday? I mean, the weather's supposed to be nice this week.
Wednesday at 5:30?
And we could do it early. I mean, whatever time works for you all. Carl, what time are you available? Or Andrew, when are you home from work?
I could do like 5:15-ish.
Okay.
I
or Kyle or?
could shoot for around the same time. I could maybe be there 5.
Yeah, 5:15 should work for me as well.
Because Andrew, you're usually back in town like 5:15, right?
Yeah. 5 would be cutting it close.
Okay.
Well, and if Dave has to be in Marlboro, what time?
I normally pick up my kids at 4 to 4:15, and as I said, if you guys were to do 5:15, I could bring the kiddos along with me and they can run around outside.
Okay.
That's a perfect place to run around.
Sure, yeah, that's right.
So
Down the lake.
you're talking 5:15, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So, Mr.
Let's
Chairman,
go for 5:15 and let's discuss where we want to meet.
Sure. I don't know. It is sort of I don't know if you guys recall Kristen Kazakis's property next door, but there is a narrow road to get down there. I think we can probably stagger some cars down there. But it's just a bit tight in terms of how many vehicles we can pull off safely off of that little access road that goes down there, Cottage Way. I don't know if Shagbark is more accessible walking down off of Shagbark.
I think we've had several cars down there scattered along. Is that boathouse? What is that? Cottage
I
Way,
think so.
sorry. Yeah.
This is sorry, that's an existing garage, and the residence is, or not the residence, but the cottage is a little off. But this is Cottage Way right here.
Okay, so Amy, maybe you could just send a little kind of like map so that people know how to, or just say where to turn, and we'll look.
Yeah, it does get a little navigation down there by GPS. Yep. It's very easy to get off track. It's a little off the grid.
Okay.
Yeah, GPS puts you like past Shagbark for this property.
Yeah. So perhaps the applicant could just email Amy, and we could just just give some little landmarks. And
sure. Yeah. Or I can even
navigation.
put together just a graphic illustration handout of where to turn right and where to turn left to get there.
Perfect. So we will see you Wednesday at 5:15. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'm not sure, I don't see any hands raised, so I don't think there's any comments right now.
I have just a comment. Ken McDonald here, 42 Shagbark Drive in Littleton, Mass. I'm here tonight representing the Fort Pond Association. I'm the elected president of the association.
Are you representing all members?
I am.
Go ahead.
Okay. I just have a few questions for David. I took a look through your letter that you submitted, and you mentioned in your letter that the lot is constrained, and I quote, "There is no practicable alternative location to install a septic system on the lot." You actually mentioned that 3 separate times in your letter. So the question I have for you, David, is did you evaluate the entire 6 acres of the property?
We did, yep, and it's the term practicable is really what we keyed in on here. That again, any effort to utilize any of the upland portion of the lot further away, you run into shallow ledge, you run into steep gradient slopes, you run into another access crossing, and it's prohibitive. Just in the context that I don't think any of these areas would park, but more importantly, the grades are very prohibitive that any effort to push the septic system further away from where we have it now would require significantly more land alteration than as we have it proposed here. Tree clearing and, to actually grade that area out to get to a location further away.
So the site map or plot plan that you're showing here represents maybe a third or maybe 25% of the lot. So the question I have, did you actually walk the 6 acres that this lot contains?
No, we didn't take the time to do that. And I don't think it's necessary to do that because, I mean, just in the first 200 feet spanning away from this, you run into this. I mean, the grades here are so prohibitive on the opposite side of this that,
yeah, I agree.
That's where we run into the prohibition.
Yeah, I agree that the grade is extremely steep. And I noticed, if I'm reading your topography correctly, it looks like the fill that's being proposed would actually continue that steep grade all the way down towards the stream. If I'm reading that correctly. You mentioned the kind of the challenging grade behind the proposed septic distribution system being in 1 foot increments leading up. And it looks like those 1 foot increments continue with the proposed fill inside the no disturb area all the way down to the stream.
So, Jacob Lemieux here, if I may. So we're basically, you're coming down off that slope at an extremely steep slope, which is about, almost 1-to-1, maybe 2-to-1. We're creating a flat spot or a relatively flat spot on top of where the septic system is going to go, and then grading down at a nice 3-to-1 grade, which will, is basically your best bet at establishing hardy vegetation there. So it's going to be less steep than the slope that's existing there. And it will not be rocky like the slope that's existing there, and it'll establish really good vegetation.
Okay. Yeah, it just looks like that steep grade continues all the way down to the stream, unless I'm reading this incorrect. Is my understanding correct? Is that grade on the left-hand side continue on the right?
bottom of slope is at the closest point, 8 feet off of the edge of the wetlands.
Okay, from the stream. Okay.
Well,
Inside
from the
50.
wetlands around the stream.
Okay.
To be fair, there's not a lot of wetlands around. It's inland bank. If there is any BBW, it's a narrow margin that was incorporated into the bank flags. It transitions fairly abruptly into uplands outside of the stream banks.
So the question I asked about the lot being constrained, because you used the term lot in your letter, but if you didn't actually walk the entire 6 acres, it doesn't sound, it sounds like you're talking about the project site down by the water being constrained, not the lot.
Well,
Would
if
that
you
be
were
a fair
to
statement,
cross
David?
over,
No, listen,
Okay.
I think we received your written letter and your grievances around 3:30, I think, this afternoon. We haven't had time to read it or vet it.
That's
I'd be very
understandable.
happy to compose articulated responses to your concerns and your grievances, but I'd be happy to do that in due time. If you have comments on the project, I'm welcome and open to listening to your comments, but I don't want to get into direct rebuttal or deliberation.
That's fine. Yeah, I guess my only comment is that the letter that Hancock has written and submitted in support of this project does state that the lot is constrained, and my comment is I don't think that's an accurate statement.
I would disagree with you. It's not. I mean, there may be other areas on a 6 acre lot that perk, but practicable alternatives don't exist. This is as I stated before, regardless of walking the remaining 5 acres of this lot to the south, is that the constraint on this lot exists immediately behind where we have the septic system now. There's no purpose of looking at the remaining 5 acres to see if constraints lie out there. Our constraint is right here.
At the site.
Right outside.
Right,
Yep.
at the
And
site. No, that's fair. I think that's fair. The last question I have is, you also mentioned, David, in your letter that there's no potential, and I'll quote it, no potential certified vernal pools on the property. So for the record here, are you stating that you have never been informed or have no knowledge of a certifiable or potential certified vernal pool located on the property?
I am. Yep. You brought that to our attention. That's actually up gradient of where the water course is. And if you read my letter, I stated that there's no natural heritage mapped, certified, or potential vernal pools on the property. And that's an accurate statement. That's a GIS data layer. That I'm aware that there is a potentially certifiable vernal pool that is located up gradient of this. And yeah, duly noted.
Okay, fair enough. I don't have any further questions. I appreciate the entire commission reviewing the letter that the Fort Pond Association has submitted. Sarah, you had a question about whether I represent the Fort Pond Association. There were many members of the association in opposition, voicing their opposition to this project. I included 10 of their names on the letter, so they're there for your reference.
Thank you. So that the committee knows that was submitted today, I believe, and any of those letters were supposed to be submitted last week. So it'll be taken under review for the next meeting.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, I guess we've got the site inspection listed. So I guess probably we just need to move on and continue this to the next hearing.
Yep. So Wednesday, 5:30 for the commissioners and the engineers.
Outstanding. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
5:30 or 5:15?
5:15.
5:15. Yep, that's what I had.
Yep.
5:15.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Be well.
Gonna move on to our continued public hearing notice of intent, Old Lake Street, Mass U12-21, Mass DEP file number 204-929, construction of a new house and associated work.
Good evening, everyone. This is Tim McGuire, wetland scientist from Goddard Consulting here on behalf of Ron Raffi again. Tonight, I'm also accompanied by Ian and Ruben from Markey and Ruben to address any drainage related or engineering concerns. So I suppose I will start by doing a screen share. So if everyone can see this, this is the site plan as proposed. This is what you saw last week, the presentation plan. Just wanted to say thank you to the commissioners that were able to make it out last week. Overall, it seemed to be a pretty positive site walk. There was just one area of concern. Let me see if I can get my mouse working. Down here by wetland flags 2 and 3, which I've thoroughly documented and will begin to describe momentarily. So this, I think I have to stop my screen share and share again to show you these pictures. So bear with me. So this is the area. As you can see here is wetland flag 3. Wetland flag 2 would be somewhere over here, not shown, and the existing path that runs off site. So again, this is just south of the locust property. So it's my understanding that this area was previously planted to be a wetland. However, that's not the case anymore. It does have hydric soils, but I did do a DEP sheet for this area in particular, which shows a lack of dominant wetland species. So again, another view, kind of turning to the right, showing that little pond there. You can see the wetland flag. And again, there's another one right here you can't see. So that is that. There was, I'll get into the specifics of the vegetation, but one of the big ones in question were these little guys, those of you who were out there with me. This was just about all there was for an herbaceous layer, and we weren't sure in the field. After some research and, you know, trying to key this out, these were determined to be orange daylilies, which are an upland species. So here's another picture I took. That's my hand on site. You can see the path there. Pulled it out of the ground. There were a bunch of them. And here's just some other pictures, not mine, just from Google, of orange daylilies, just to show the striking resemblance between the two. This person clearly did a better job of pulling it out of the ground than I did. But anyways, again, so I took a measurement of the area. This is 10.5 feet from where it stops being gravelly, clear upland soils and starts being a very mucky, about a 10-wire 2-1 O horizon, which I have some pictures of in a second, and just documenting that the measurement I'm about to show you is indeed 10.5 feet. So here's the O horizon there from this area. You can see very mucky. It goes for that for at least 24 inches. And this is pulled right along the path there. This very gravelly, a lot orangey, oranger colored soil. So again, that's why I started the measurement here, right where it stopped being that gravel, and got the 10.5 feet. So with that, I will pull up the DEP sheet itself that I did for just this specific area. And as you can see, kind of off to the right there where we were looking, if you're facing the pond, there was also glossy buckthorn being non-dominant, with plenty of Japanese knotweed and some multiflora rose as well. The only thing that could have been a wetland indicator species was there was a little bit of grapevine. Again, really no herbaceous layer there, with the exception of the orange daylilies, which are indeed an upland species. So due to the lack of wetland indicator vegetations, despite the hydric soil, I am confident in saying that that area is indeed upland. However, I did a little GIS analysis here. This is the same graphic you saw, but with a little more information. So I traced over an orthophoto view the approximate extent of this area in question here in orange, and I drew a separate 50-foot buffer zone off of that you can see in a lighter shade of green here. This darker green is the 50-foot buffer zone as shown on the submitted site plans, which again does not even touch the property. All work is being kept outside of the 50-foot buffer zone. And again, I don't think I touched on as just to remind you, all that we're doing within buffer zone is the septic system here and portions of the retaining wall, along with grading associated with that. So with this analysis here, you can see that even if we were to include the area in question, which is the 10.5 feet here, as wetlands, which we will not be, or which I will state that it lacked the hydric vegetation. Even if we did, we still wouldn't even impact it. And there would only be 125 square feet of it on site. Again, not impacted. So you can see whether or not we call that wetland or not, we're still not impacting the 50-foot buffer zone. So that's, I'll leave this one up. That's essentially what we have for new information for you. I don't believe there were any other discrepancies described in the field. I understand there were some comments and concerns last week in regards to drainage. If you would like to go deeper into those, Ian Rubin is here. He's already hashed these out at the Board of Health with a lot of the abutters, and he certainly would have information on, you know, why the grading was done as it is.
Okay, I have just a few questions. I was out there again on site. I apologize, I wasn't able to be there with the whole group, but I noticed that it looked as though today there was more vegetation starting to kind of pop up. And I'm curious, and I haven't had a chance, honestly, to look at any data in your, if you can go back to that slide where we just were at. Yep, in terms of in the interior of the retaining wall, have there been a lot of probes in there where you have your blue highlighted area for your septic system in terms of any wetland soils in there?
No, there's no wetland soils on site. It's bright orange. I have some other pictures of that. It's complete.
That's why I'm just curious if you can share with us your data on the site as well. Just because it has been altered, so I was just curious if you have that you can share.
Absolutely.
Not that area.
No, I've got some more coming down below. I'll just give a brief.
Thank you.
And, you know, here's some vinca in the area. Just, yeah, this is the area in concern again.
Yep.
So this is facing the neighbor to the east, I believe, and you can see that it's covered in oriental bittersweet vinca.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of common ivy in there. I think I have some pictures of the bright upland orange soils as well.
Do you have that plotted on that area?
What do you mean by that?
Where you're going to show your pictures of your bright orange soil?
Yes, I have pictures of the soils that I'll get to. This is on site. So this is now facing north. Ivy Road is right about there. And you can see a bunch of knotweed, you know, oriental bittersweet across this. The only thing, there was a couple ash trees. It is the off season and they're hard to ID. They could have been black ash, but even still, there's not anywhere near close to 50% wetland indicator species. So this was pulled. You can see this is that area. There's that vinca in the background, kind of a dark, about 6 inches of organic topsoil, and then, or not so organic, but still dark. And then we hit that bright orange. And I think you can kind of see the colors better in that picture. So these were pulled from the upland portion of the site. This was just about, this was close to the southern property line where I pulled these. And again, some common ivy on the ground. And I think that's just about all I have for that. Does that address your concerns?
Well, I was curious specifically where that one test was taken, and I would just like to know how many soil samples you took in that area.
Certainly, I did, or hold on, I'm sorry, I was trying to pull back up the presentation plan. Hope I'm not making anyone dizzy. Yeah, so these were, there's soils pulled across this whole entire area, and we do have passing test pits, you know, across the septic area as well. Those were closer. The ones that I showed you, I think, were somewhere in this general area that I photographed, but it would be redundant to photograph every single test hole I did when they were so similar. And, you know, there's, especially in this area, although outside of buffer zone, this is really more of the concentrated knotweed area. Up here, we're down to here toward the southern end. The knotweed kind of disperses a little until we get closer to the pond, in which it's just a bunch of, it's the upland species that I showed you. And the DEP sheet that was submitted with the application, I believe, was taken at flag 8, so down here. So a lot of these off-site, but still the same kind of species that were here were recorded. And there was a lot of hickory as well.
Does the knotweed threaten your septic system? Is it right in the area of your septic?
So it kind of stops being as dense as it is in the area of the house as it does here, but it's all going to be pulled out for construction.
You're going at least 4 feet down, I assume.
Yes, and if
That's
that's
how-
something the commission.
Aren't we getting water at, I think the notes were between 2 and 4 feet?
Water from, are you referring to notes from the test holes?
I think the question was raised earlier in our notes of at what point you hit water. And I think that's referenced in our notes from the last meeting, that it was stated between 2 and 4 feet. I'm just curious if you've made accommodations for dewatering.
Yeah, if Ian Rubin would want to hop in, if you have any information to kind of address that question, that'd be appreciated.
Hi, Ian Rubin here from Mark Ian Rubin. I don't have the soil notes in front of me. I can pull them up, but the septic system is substantially above ground, and we are, we meet all the requirements for the septic system. So I don't quite understand the question that you're asking as to the depth.
I think it pigtails on what Anna had asked in regards to the knotweed and removal of going, how far down you were going to have to excavate to bring that out. And if I reference the notes from the last meeting, which were approved, when asked how deep it was to groundwater, he reviewed the test pit logs and said it was 2 to 4 feet.
Yeah, I mean, if I can pull up the soil tests. Just bear with me 1 second here.
I guess, are you removing all the knotweed prior to putting the septic system in then?
Well, it's kind of a part of the, the clearing of the site to make room to, put the house up and the septic as well. It's going to be excavated anyways, so the knotweed's going to be removed. It's not as if there's really going to be any areas on site where, remaining knotweed would be allowed to persist post-construction.
Sorry, the soil tests show groundwater 2 to 3 feet or so. It's a little bit more than 3 feet maybe, but mostly 2 feet to groundwater.
Thank you.
But that is high groundwater. That seepage goes down to actual standing water about 3 feet in these test holes we have here. Seepage starts at about 2.5 to 3 feet.
Thank you.
So Tim, this is Carl. That area that I pointed out that I didn't have time to hang around and do the test pits, that where the groups of ash trees were, that was that last soil profile you showed. That's where that was from.
That's correct.
Anybody else got any more comments?
Yeah, well, I have some comments on the site in general. The site is, I think, is forested with an incredibly diverse group of trees, that mainly hardwoods, which for Littleton is unusual compared to all the white pine we have. But the diversity of species on this piece of land, I thought was just amazing, and the size of the trees, the diverse trees. So I guess my question is how much of that vegetation will be removed for this project?
Well, the limit of work is outlined here in orange.
So I'm looking at the entire site.
Not the entire site, but a large portion of it, yes.
Like, percentage-wise, I think you'd be looking at a 90% clear at minimum.
I don't have that exact calculation in front of me. I could.
I think we
definitely
could
have
all,
that.
we can all kind of eyeball that, though. I agree with Carl's statement.
I mean,
Right. And in the past, we've had, you know, yes, there's the 50-foot buffer, but, or the 50-foot no disturb, but it's a 100-foot buffer. And we need to consider the function within the 100 feet, particularly since it's directly up gradient of conservation land and a stormwater drainage feature that is integral to Long Lake. So in the past, at some other projects, we have not approved of projects that clear cut or nearly clear cut within the 100-foot buffer. And I did go out on site after the site walk just to clarify that. So I did see it as well. And I did note it also seems at the moment to be a low spot for drainage off of the roadways. And so that drainage, it will further stress our stormwater buffer. And so that's also a concern for me. But the major concern would be to, you know, almost clear cut the 100-foot buffer. And that's not something that we've approved of in the past for other projects.
So a few comments on that. For clarity, the 100-foot buffer zone is not shown on this graphic just for the sake of articulating the 50-foot buffer zone. The 100-foot buffer is here, which bisects the lot, allowing,
Correct.
yes, this portion within the jurisdiction of the commission. When we're looking at that portion, the percentage of that portion that would be cut for the construction is significantly less than 90%. And we're now looking at maybe 60% of that to be cut. A few reminders that we discussed last week is that we do have passing test pits up in this area. We made the decision to put the house closer to the road rather than the wetlands, closer to Ivy Road, that is, in order to minimize impervious surface within buffer zone. In fact, the only impervious surface would be that of the existing or the proposed retaining wall here. There will still be some room left here for vegetation, and it directly abuts the town's conservation land. There's, you know, so that's kind of what I have to say to that. If Ian had any comments on the drainage.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we went through the drainage on the site and whether and how the water is actually running and so on. And if you look on Ivy Road, you'll see there is a swale on the high side of Ivy Road. Any water coming down towards Ivy Road hits that swale and it goes to Lake Drive. So water is really not coming from Ivy Road to over the lot, except for Ivy Road itself. And up until our property line here on the east side, there is essentially a berm keeping the water on the road. And what we agreed upon with the abutter was to extend the berm to ensure that the water stays on the road and would cross the driveway and then would have to go around this fill and go to Lake Drive. So it is somewhat avoiding the lot, the runoff. We did offer to put in an infiltration basin from the roof, but that was never really encouraged by either the Board of Health or Neshoba Board of Health, Jim Gareffi. So what we have on this plan is what was finally agreed upon by both Jim Gareffi, the Board of Health, and the abutter. when it came to drainage.
So the Board of Health doesn't really deal with stormwater. I don't think they really care about roof drainage, do they? That wasn't something I was aware of.
Well, it came up because the abutters brought it up. But the
Sure.
other issue, I think, I mean, I did discuss this with Mar and Two Hill, and what the regulations are in Littleton as far as providing stormwater management for a lot this size. And Mar and Two Hill said that lots less than an acre do not have to have stormwater management.
Sure. This lot is directly abutting and
The wetlands. I mean, I understand that.
and contains resource buffers. And so that is part of the difference. And so I'm expressing a concern that the drainage that normally would be handled with this lot is going to go elsewhere. And so you mentioned the Ivy Road swales. So if, you know, and I'm happy that you were able to work with the abutter, because that was also a concern I have to, you know, not divert. We've seen it quite a bit in the lake neighborhoods. You get a new house and the abutter all of a sudden has all this water that they weren't supposed to have. So I appreciate that you did that. I wanted to mention that I have concerns about diverting drainage from Ivy Road down to Lake Road, because Lake Road runs into the lake. And so we very much have concerns about stormwater on that road. So in my view, I don't see that as a solution. And I would ask you to look, you know, relook at doing what you can to, you know, maintain infiltration and drainage on site.
Yeah, I mean, we could put in a small infiltration basin in the top left-hand, in the corner by the intersection of Ivy and Lake, and that top northerly corner of the lot. We could certainly put in a small infiltration bed there, relatively small, without really changing the grades much, to catch the water from the roof of the house. And that's all it would really do, is catch the water from the roof of the house. I mean, there's no means of really collecting it any other way.
Are you talking about like a rain garden type of thing?
Not a rain garden. I mean, a rain garden is not really going to infiltrate much water at all. All a rain garden will do is purify the water. So, if we're getting water from the roof, there's no necessity to purify it. It's clean water, essentially.
Well, usually a rain garden is like a oh gosh, I can't think of the word. It's a depressed area, so it is infiltrating. It's not just cleansing.
Yeah, well, except that you're sitting on wetland, and it can't absorb much water at all. I mean, a rain garden, unless it's combined with a pond of some sort that it can retain water. I mean, a rain garden is there to have the vegetation clean the water. It doesn't really provide infiltration per se.
So I think what, you know, regardless of the method, I would like to see this site function in a way similar that it is now with respect to stormwater and with respect to the added impervious surfaces, regardless of the acre or not. It's directly up gradient of a resource area. And that's the primary concern. And again, I would say diverting any drainage to Lake Drive is not going to solve the problem. It just puts more stormwater, which I know you can appreciate stormwater from roads, you know, carry TSS and plenty of pollutants, towards our lake. You know, the lake drive is a known issue with respect to runoff to the lake. So I would not want to see any stormwater from this site diverting to Lake Drive, which would be the reverse of what it's doing right now, because right now this lot is lower in elevation.
Well, I can certainly add that to the plan and provide the calculations. So. If that's where we want to leave it at this point.
I think it's worth noting to go back to the original comments that Carl had in regards to the diverse nature of the lot as well. I don't know if any other commissioners have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I just have a hard time trying to understand how this, with this lot going to be basically 90% clear, how it can potentially even come close to functioning the way it is now.
A quick question. Just, I know I think in Littleton, for new construction, it's typically, you know, you get close to that acre in size. And this is a 0.2 acre lot?
8,500 square feet roughly.
Right.
Which is a quarter less than, yeah, about a fifth of an acre.
I do think that I would like to be able to visit the site to see if any other additional vegetation come up soon as well, now that we're coming into our growing season.
Well, that's a good point, because I don't think we've really given the vegetation a chance. Tim, when did you do the delineation?
The delineation was done last year, end of March, similar time as to right now.
Did you do dash sheets for the plants then, so we would have known what was there?
Yes, I did, and those were submitted to the commission with the original.
Were those, but
there was some cinnamon fern in there, I believe, off the top of my head. Cinnamon fern came up. I'm not sure. I don't have it right in front of me. I don't know exactly which others.
That was in that area of question down by the sidewalk?
That was, the DEP sheet was done at flag 8, I believe, if I remember correctly, which is over here. So this is not far from this area as well. I think I've very well documented here. We have 4 dominant non-upland indicator species in this area. Even if we did have, you know, cinnamon fern pop up or sensitive fern pop up, even if we had both of them, we would still have greater than 50% upland species in this area.
Amy, when was the wetlands verified?
How do you mean?
Well, they were done, but so when did we actually, if they were done last March, when was the first time someone actually saw them on property?
It was at the site walk. It's part of this notice of intent.
Okay.
And the flags were still in the field,
right?
Very well, as you know, as you can see in the pictures that I have. So I mean, even
I
regardless
would
of
like to give it a couple weeks and see what grows.
Sure, but even still, we would need a lot of wetland species to grow in this small area.
That's great. It's Mother Nature. Give it a shot.
Even so, as I've depicted in this graphic, we still are not even touching our limit of work with the 50-foot buffer zone. And as the commission stated last week, you generally approve projects when all work is kept outside of the 50-foot buffer zone. That was stated last week early in the hearing.
Right, but you're, okay. So I think you'd have to go back to the abutting resource and the value of that resource as well.
Matt, have you been to the site? Do you think you would have a chance to take, because Carl and I did walk around, and I obviously would defer to your tree expertise or knowledge. I'd be curious to have some sort of count on the different types of species that are out there.
You're on mute, Matt.
Yeah, I could take a look.
Yeah, yeah, hey Matt, I'd be willing to join you if you want.
I would as well.
I think I think you'd be impressed with the diversity of species.
Yeah, I'd just be curious for what we have in Littleton compared to what you see here, and there, as we've been discussing, the overall function of how those trees would help maintain this property. I think that's been the biggest sticking point for me is how much this.
Chairman, what would you like to do? We've got another meeting.
I see two raised hands.
Okay.
Does somebody want to speak?
Yeah.
Mr. Banks, I think you had your hand up first.
Yes, thank you, Amy, and thank you, board. My name is Kenneth Banks. I'm at 10 Lake Drive, which is just across Ivy Road from where this property is. I just want to kind of reiterate something on the swale that's on my side of the road. That's been cut in there for when my system got put in, my septic system, which is just north of where this house is going to be sitting. And also it does catch the water from what does slope off my property, but primarily the property to behind me, which is on the corner of Ivy and King Road, which is that road that runs up to Goldsmith Street. And there's a lot of water that comes down through that King Road, runs off the backside of that road, comes across in front of Mr. Barron's place there, and then goes to that side. Like I said, the water that we see on my side is primarily from the lot directly behind me. And like I said, this time of year hasn't been running well much. And also too is I noticed this morning in my walk with the dog that that portion of Ivy Road has been greatly upgraded by one of the landowners on that road. And I apologize, I forgot his name. That he and his son dumped a bunch of that stone dust down there to kind of pack it in. So the road's been holding up pretty well. But if you go further down past where Mr. Barron's place is, you'll notice that the road does tend to take a lot of water and comes across there. As far as the trees on the property, there's very few. I actually just had the light and water department, or I think it was the water department, plant a couple of maple trees right in the corner of my property, which is just to the north point of where they're looking at. And we also have a couple of maples on that side. We did have an elm tree, which was on our south side of our property that had to be taken down because it was diseased and dead. But there are a bunch of good sized trees in that lot, and looking where the house is going to be put, I don't see how they could do the work and around there without having to remove those trees. As one of the commissioners mentioned as well, the size of the land, I wonder why this is being developed anyways. There's so many places around the town that we're losing land. It's not like this is a prime piece of property that needs to be built. To me, it's kind of like being shoehorned in. And I'd prefer to see the trees and block my view to the lake than to see a house there anyways. But just with the water in the area, this year hasn't been that bad yet, which is very surprising. My sump pump has not been running as much as it used to, but when you get bad years, I even have standing water between my house and and my septic pump that's in the yard. So just from a water perspective, there's still too many flat surfaces here. I think that's just going to put more water in places where it doesn't need to be. And that's outside the septic system and what it's going to, do in that area there as far as the wall, especially around the outside. And thank you. I appreciate you taking my comments.
So this is Tim McGuire. There's something I would like to reiterate here is that this lot, although there are some hickory trees and some, there's a few other species of trees, some oaks, a couple ashes. This is by no means a pristine upland site. The vast majority of it is covered in knotweed, and those portions that are not covered in knotweed are very heavily covered with oriental bittersweet, as you could see in those pictures that I had previously shown. So all of these invasives would be removed from the area as well with the proposed construction.
I understand that, and the invasives are an issue in the area. If you walk around the wetlands park, you will see that there are some invasives. I know there's a few of us that every once in a while we have an opportunity, we'll take a pair of cutters and snip some of that bittersweet that's climbing up around the trees to try to reduce it and kill it. But I personally, I don't think that it's an improvement to throw a house in just to get rid of invasives, in my mind.
Just my opinion.
And Mr. Barron had a hand raised?
Yeah. Yes.
Hi. Hi, Greg Barron. So the road, Ivy Road is a private road, and the swale that is there is being maintained, and I believe Bob Hall does an awful lot of that. There's a lot of water that comes down King Street and then down onto Ivy. It generally, without the swale there, and the swale's only been there for maybe a year, year and a half, would flow down right across this piece of property. And our cesspool is located right next to the area. So we had discussed that we need to keep the water on the road going down, hence some of the descriptions on the plan you're looking at. My thought was that this property is going to be raised 5 feet higher than it is now with retaining walls. Then all the water that would go through this property, and there is a considerable amount of it, even though there's a swale there now, there's still a lot of water that does go across this property, cannot come onto my property. It needs to go down to Lake Street. And if it goes down to Lake Street, it would need to be directed over to the catch pond. Otherwise, it's going straight down into Lake Street, as noticed. And I know that quite often in the spring, I will have a good 4 inches of water in my crawl space underneath our house next door. So the water level is close to the surface, and I think the 2 foot is probably close, but getting down to 3 foot would be kind of a bit unusual. So just as far as a dry well for the water coming off of the roof, I would be happy to see something like that, because the less it comes over towards my place, the better. And we are still concerned, even though we do have an agreement to put a berm up to keep the water on the road, that with the massive amount of increased land being put, or dirt and stuff being put onto this property, that it may switch groundwater flow back over to our part, because it's going to hit that, and the subterranean water is going to hit that, and then going to be directed somewhere, and that's sort of going to be at us probably. So those are our thoughts on it at this point.
Yeah, those are my exact concerns regarding the stormwater that currently is flowing onto the property, and with the grading that's going to be added, it cannot be diverted off the property. We've had several other projects in the lake neighborhoods where grading needed to be added for septic or for whatever project, and I believe Westchester was a recent example, the one kind of down the road. In order the permit, we needed substantiation that the stormwater was not going to be diverted to, someone else's property, diverted away from where it's supposed to go. So in this case, I think we need more substantiation that the stormwater that currently flows onto this property will not be diverted elsewhere by virtue of adding, adding to the grading at this site, because the impacts will be to the neighbor, to potentially overflowing a cesspool up gradient of the lake, or diverting it again, I feel like a broken record, to Lake Road, which we know flows down to the lake. So we cannot put more water in those locations. And so the water that's going to the site needs to stay at the site because of the sensitive nature of the abutting area. And it's a small site, and, and it's a challenge, and I recognize that. But if this site is to host this project, it needs to not make things worse around it with respect to stormwater. And, going back to what we talked about with the 100-foot buffer, and losing a lot or most of the vegetation in the 100-foot buffer, within the 100-foot buffer. I think that also really needs to be looked at, because we don't typically say, okay, don't disturb the 50, but you can clear cut 80% of the 50 to 100. That's not typically what we do either. The 100-foot buffer is also a resource area, and we know it's a sensitive site, and we know it's up gradient of important resources. So I think the applicant needs to go back and look at those things.
Well, I think, as he said, only the septic system is within the 50 to 100. So he needs to actually just calculate how much he is actually removing. But also, I think it would be worthwhile to see how much we could shift this limit of work more toward the retaining wall, or is there an option of moving the retaining wall closer to the septic system, or maybe you need that distance from the septic to the retaining wall, but so to compress that, so that
a tight tank,
more of the 50 to 100 does not have to be cleared.
Can I just make a comment on that? I mean, where that wall is as close as it can be. It can't be any closer to that septic system. And we can't put the septic system any closer to the house. I mean, that's a 2-bedroom house, and then it's about as small as you could possibly make a house. I mean, anything smaller than that really doesn't, it's a pretty small house as is. The room around the retaining wall is we need some room to do the construction. And there are ways to keep the water on the site. And one of them is to allow the water to come down from Ivy Road. It would naturally flow straight down here, and if necessary, so that it doesn't flow onto their abutters' properties, to put a swale and then have room below the wall here to absorb that water. So we would need that room anyway if we're going to absorb the water. And certainly down this side too, and put it down here. We can collect some of the water from the roof, but that's not going to be able to take care of all the water. And it's only the roof we're putting here.
Putting it into the driveway.
But I mean, we certainly could put a swale and have
Why don't you come back with a plan so we've got our people, we've got to.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we can certainly do that.
Maybe consider constructing some infiltration underneath the driveway. I don't know.
There's a problem there. I mean, infiltration has to be 10 feet from the property line and has to be 10 feet from the house, so that there's no room.
Okay, well, I think we've given you some good feedback to work with. So as the chairman said, we need to move on.
No, very good. Thank you.
Thank
You need to set up another site walk or get access to the property.
Yeah, I would be happy to attend another site walk with any other members of the commissioners, be it to take a look at the specific trees on site or this area in question, as I've called it out. I'm flexible during the week. I'm not sure if you'd want to hash this out now. Weekends are tougher.
Al, do you have any particular time that you would like to go and view the trees and stuff you were talking about?
I've seen the trees. I think we're trying to get Matt out there.
Yeah, sorry I wasn't able to make the last. I guess I could do in the evening during this week.
What do you want to do it a little bit later so there's more vegetation can grow?
You want
come
to
up?
do 2 to 3 weeks, so there is vegetation.
Our next meeting is until April 12th.
Right.
Well, I guess I was just going for me in particular. I mean, new trees aren't going to grow up this week, so I could just go look at the trees.
I think it's more the vegetation on the ground that maybe.
Yeah, but I think Matt can coordinate when he wants to go out. Does the applicant grant the commission members opportunity to go out on their own to look at vegetation prior to the next meeting?
The commission members, certainly.
Okay.
I don't think I'm going to be able to make it out anytime this week, but if you wanted to wait until early next week, I'd be happy to go out there with
But can Matt have access to the property?
Yes, he can. I'm just saying that if,
Okay.
if you're willing to wait until next week, I'd be happy to go out there with you, just so that we can,
Okay.
verbally,
Matt, we'll let you.
face-to-face verbally be able to address any of your concerns.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, we gotta move on.
All right, is that all?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Continued public hearing, notice of intent, 228 Howard Ave. R08-42-0, Massview, D file number 204-930, construction of a detached garage. Somebody want to speak to that?
Yes, good evening. This is Michael Torrielli. Nice to see everybody again, and I'd like to thank those members of the commission that came out to my property last week for the walkthrough. Amy, if I may share my screen.
Please.
Okay. Sorry, just looking for my one moment. Oh, there it is. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so I believe that the only change that was requested last meeting, or the only update to the plan here, was to check across the street any wetlands that were in existence, and Brandon did do that from David Ross and Associates, and you'll notice he did put the 100-foot buffer here on the edge of my property for where the proposed stockpile area would be. Everything else on this is the same from the last time we spoke, except for the fact that it's just in color. So the garage was staked out, and I know some members were able to come out and look at it in person. So I'm not sure if there's anything particular that you'd like to discuss, or any questions that I could potentially answer. I know that we had determined last week that Brandon didn't need to be on, so I'll certainly do my best.
I just had a couple questions. Is there any availability of just sliding the garage a little bit closer to the driveway to accommodate saving some of those oaks? You have some mature oaks there that I think offer great value.
Potentially. I think that only one oak is, even if I move it closer to the driveway, I think that there's one that's going to have to come down either way, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think I have to take down any beyond that one there, but there is one that's kind of leaning toward where the garage will be. Right now, it's kind of in the line of sight between two corners. I could move it. I could see if we could move it a couple feet over, but it would still be very, very close and leaning toward the garage. Just that one tree that I think would need to come down either way. But I don't see an issue. I don't see an issue bumping it over a couple of feet. I just don't know if it would save that one tree.
We're still gonna be hitting the root system of it.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask about, because even if you're not, right in the shadow of the tree, if you build within, 10 feet of the tree, the root system dies, and you're impacting more than, intended. So I think it would, if you can squeeze it in, it might be a valuable move to help with some of the other trees to, get a little farther from the root zone. I did do a drive-by. I didn't make the site walk, but I did do a drive-by. So I did see the stakes. Those were helpful. I would say that it would be good to maybe beef up, since the stockpile is going to be, I don't see any way to completely keep it out of the 100-foot buffer. So because it will be in the buffer zone, we need to beef up the controls for the stockpile. So I know there's some erosion controls in general for the project, but when we have a stockpile within the we try. Well, okay, let's take a step back. We try not to stockpile at all within the buffer, but when it's unavoidable, we need you to beef up the erosion controls and protections, and so like putting bales around it each night and covering it, that type of thing, depending on how long it's going to be there. So I would want to see that.
Okay. It looks.
I'm sorry, I may have missed this. Is there no reason why the stockpile can't go on the opposite side of the driveway?
I don't see a reason why it couldn't. That is a decently steep hill where it goes up to where my septic system is. But I also don't see why we couldn't, shift it toward the house, 15 feet or whatever it would be. It looks like it would fit better within that little corner right there. Unless it's because that recharge trench is there. I can also,
is the telephone pole noted on that? I just don't see that because I don't know if you're working. Don't you have a telephone pole? Right?
Yeah, where that arrow is, it says magnetic nail set in utility pole 66. The end of that arrow is right where the telephone pole is.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of working around that telephone pole with your dump trucks as well. That's why I was thinking maybe it would be better on the other side of the driveway.
Mm-hmm. He's got that big wall right there too, so.
Right, and then isn't that fully in the buffer zone, inside the 100-foot buffer zone? Am I looking at his plan wrong?
I think Sarah's talking about across the driveway.
I'm talking about across, so up of the yellow line, up of 104.
Oh, yeah, that's it slopes up immediately right at the edge of the driveway.
Yeah.
Up to the septic. I agree with Julie. I think we're talking about it, but we usually like to see that called out on the plans too, that, the stockpiles will be protected once they're created, whether putting erosion controls around them or covering them, like she said. I think there should be a note on the plan stating that.
Yeah, I think you'd want to set a time limit for that as well, because you don't want that to go on for a long period of time if the project stalls as well. So because you really do not allow stockpiling in a buffer zone.
Yeah,
that's a typical condition that if it's more than 30 days, it has to be stabilized. So that's in there.
The erosion control is delineated here, this dotted line around the stockpile itself. Or moving my cursor. He has it, he has the note right here. The contractor thought it would take no more than a month for the project from start to finish.
Does that include like weather delays and inevitable issues that creep up? Like, what's your feeling on that? Is that like a conservative estimate, or?
I think as long as nothing crazy happens, it's completely doable. It's not a complicated project. It's just a relatively basic detached garage. So I would hope you could get it up within a month.
Well, in the stockpile, I would think you would be able to get that out sooner.
Yep. And that can, for sure. And, your point is taken about beefing up the erosion controls around it. That's no problem.
And that could be a condition.
Underground utilities?
I'm sorry?
Underground utilities or aerial?
Underground.
Was that on the plan?
The water line is.
The water main is on the plan. Proposed. No, the PVC sleeve is for the water main.
So that needs to get added onto the plan.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we did talk about it like maybe two meetings ago or something, and I think you were still working it out at that point. whether you're going to go above or below. So
Yeah, everything from the street to my house is already below ground.
but presumably you want electric. The electric.
I'm sorry?
Presumably you're going to have electric for the garage.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think the only decision was whether or not we were going to come off the pole that's right there or off the house.
Right, I remember that. Okay. So I think if you have the answer, that needs to be added to the plan.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't make this site visit either. If there was tree loss in the buffer, was there consideration for some maybe restoration?
Yeah, Amy and I chatted briefly about that. She's going to give me a list of, whatever I can plant for restoration. Again, it's just going to be, I honestly think it's just going to be the one tree. So I can replant something.
Sorry, I didn't make the site visit, just checking. Thank you.
Oh, sure, no problem.
Yeah, so I think if you just put in also where that restoration might be, because it is a significant loss with that oak, just to what you might plant and where.
Sure.
And if you could look, if you could take into consideration when you go back out, sliding the garage a little bit closer to the driveway, if that helps or not, to help with one of the other trees.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Are we to the point where you're ready to approve this?
No, I think they have to make amendments on the plan.
Great.
I can have those amendments made. Does that mean I have to wait for another meeting?
Well, if you're going to move the footprint of the garage, that would change that. You have to denote your underground utilities and mark what tree is going to be lost in the buffer zone. So it needs to be stated on that plan. So those three items.
And restoration.
Restoration, and also if you want to have, I'm not sure, I can't see on that plan if the stockpile is circumferenced with erosion control.
Yeah, when you say circumference, do you mean all the way around it?
Correct.
Yeah, he just
That's
has
what I
it
was trying to
here.
get at.
Okay.
He has it here toward the wetlands, but I can have him go all the way around it.
Right. Yeah, so that's your site boundary that he has shown, but with the stockpile, we'd like to see it fully surrounded. An additional layer.
Yeah, so I think that warrants a new plan if you've got, 4 or 5 things that have to be added.
Next meeting is what, the 12th of April?
Yep.
It's going to be a really long meeting.
Excellent.
Well, this one should be a quick one. I think we're close.
Maybe we could put that, if you don't already have some of the first ones, maybe put it towards the beginning, Amy, if you can.
They're all the new stuff had to already be posted.
Okay.
In the past, haven't we said that if he submits a revised plan, he wouldn't have to come in?
But if he's moving the garage and
not
the
moving the
and the
garage.
tree or trees aren't noted on that plan.
I mean, we went through it during the site walk. I could certainly have everything noted. I'm happy to move the garage, but it's not going to affect that one tree. So I don't really know what we would accomplish by moving it. If the commission would like me to do that for any particular reason, I'm happy to do that, but it's not going to save that one single tree on my 3 acres that I need to take down.
It should help the root zones of the other trees in the area.
I thought there were 2 that were going to have to come down, 2 of those oaks.
There's another one that's probably about 7 or 8 feet away, and I think when we looked at it with the commission members, we thought that that would be, the other one would be okay during the walkthrough.
Seems as though we should be able to close this out with a upgrade of the drawing.
Well, he doesn't have, well, he's gonna have to make a decision on the electrical as well. If it's going underground, it has to be on the plan.
Well, if it gets put on.
Yeah, I can have all those put on the plan relatively easily. I mean, like I said, all the electric is already under the ground. In fact, there might even be I know that they had, when they built my house, they ran PVC tubing under the ground, which is what the cable company used. And there may even be a tube already in there that's not being used, but it's going to be, it'll be under the ground, whether it's from the pole or from the house. But I will happily have him note that on the plan. It's going to be literally enough, you know, to run a electric garage and some lights, electric garage door and some lights. It's a very, very simple garage.
I could put this on at 7:30 and we could do the administrative discussion stuff at the end.
It would be, I mean, it would be great if I could get it approved just by submitting a new plan. It would be much appreciated if at all possible. So I don't have to wait you know, an additional 2 weeks.
3
weeks. I had wanted to break ground in mid-April.
What do you think, folks?
I think unfortunately we don't typically, you know, I think there's been 1 or 2 instances where someone's been able to put something in pen on a diagram. I just don't think that you know, I think I guess I'll step back. I think we're really close and I think we, you know, come to an agreement. But I think it sets a really dangerous precedent for other projects and, you know, in this case, again, I think we're pretty close, but I'm just concerned about letting something or passing something through with, you know, with quite a few items on the punch list to, you know, to get updated.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly wouldn't. I mean, I would go back to David Ross and have, you know, and quite frankly, going to have to pay for another plan.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to do that. I'm not going to, you know, I'm not going to write on this one or anything like that. It'll be official. But I would just really appreciate, you know, the board's consideration of not having me wait 3 more weeks in another, you know, relatively long meeting for, you know, what seem to be some pretty quick changes that I can have Russ make.
Well, I think the commission appreciates that. It's just that we have to follow protocol. And so if this was brought to us earlier, it wouldn't have been such a rush.
Well, this is the same plan we looked at a couple of weeks ago when the electric didn't come up then.
We just had a site walk and most usually take numerous hearings. Some take years.
I guess the board does not want to close this out. That's my consensus of opinion. So you're going to have to just get the new plan taken care of, unfortunately. Would be what I see from board members. Sorry about that.
So I put it on at 7:30?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, we've got to move on.
All right, thank you.
8:30, request for further extension of aquatic control at Long Pond, Speck Pond, and Gopher's Pond. Amy, you got anything you want to say about this?
We got some folks here.
Oh, whoever wants to speak to it?
Hi, folks. Dominic Maringolo here from Solitude Lake Management. I believe Matt Silverman's here from.
Yep.
Yep, Matt Silverman, environmental analyst from Littleton Water Department.
Matt, you've been on the whole time, riveting. You haven't fallen asleep yet.
Our first meeting.
Last one too, I'll bet. This isn't even a long one.
So, well, we're basically here in support of the commission approving an extension of the existing orders of conditions for these projects. Solitude has been the contractor for these projects for many years. There was a span of 2 or 3 years where we were not, but last year we were back, and we have conditionally been awarded the contract for 2021. The programs have been very successful in managing the non-native invasive species, specifically curly-leaf pondweed and fanworts. And on Doleful Pond, the invasive species is water chestnut. The curly-leaf pondweed generally recurs every year, but the fanwort we've been managing with a systemic herbicide, fluoridone, and there have been years where there's been either no or very small areas of fluoridone treatment required. In Doleful Pond, I'm happy to say that last year no herbicide treatments were required. After a number of years of treatments on the water chestnut, we were able to successfully manage the water chestnut regrowth in Doleful Pond with only a day's worth of hand pulling. And we expect that to be the case again for this coming summer. As with all invasive species, they certainly threaten the ponds and the habitat of the ponds. This program has been very successful in managing those species, and we'd like to be able to continue with the programs. And we hope that the commission will be willing to allow these orders of conditions to be extended for that purpose. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commissioners may have about the programs. Just go ahead and fire away.
How long of an extension are you seeking?
We would appreciate a 3-year extension. We do provide a year-end report every year of the program that kind of summarizes the kind of early season, late season vegetation assemblages in the lakes, what was done that year, kind of what's anticipated for the coming year. And I know the Clean Lakes Committee, I forget the name of it, but I know they're very active and especially active on keeping the residents around the ponds kind of up to speed on what's going on, and they help with the notifications and the public notifications for the treatments as well. So we're asking for 3-year extension, please. Yeah.
Anna, I see you got your hand up.
I do. I have my hand up. Well, I do have my mute off, but I was wondering, how many water bodies are you talking about for this extension?
So there's 3. I'm sorry. Yeah, there's Long Pond, Spectacle Pond, and Doleful Pond.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else got any questions or comments?
So is your plan to minimize herbicides as much as you can in favor of pulling and, well, I guess pulling and gathering?
Yeah, so actually a water chestnut is hand pulling has been pretty successful on that particular plant at other water bodies in the state. So basically when we went out, again, we weren't on the project for a couple of years, but we went out to do the early season survey of Doleful Pond. It was pretty clear to us that there was only scatterings of the water chestnut plants out there. It was really no need to treat the pond with a herbicide. We felt it was much more adequate to just have a person in a small john boat went out and was literally pulling the plants by hand. So that was much more efficient, certainly less herbicide use. And also, with the curlyleaf pondweed, unfortunately, there hasn't been really a herbicide that has been able to provide truly systemic control of that plant. It's a very prolific plant. It covers, I think this year there was about 40 acres of curlyleaf pondweed in Spectacle Pond and 25 acres in Long Pond. So really, unfortunately, too large of an area to do with hand pulling. The fanwort, we are using a systemic herbicide. So we haven't gotten it down to the point where we've been able to use hand pulling, but we are implementing kind of a spot treatment approach where we're not treating the whole ponds with the fluridone herbicide, only sections of it. And actually in Long Pond, we go really several years without having to do any herbicide treatment on the fanwort. And that's been pretty successful kind of maintenance program where we using the systemic, treating it as it comes back in small areas and not having to use a whole lake treatment approach.
I don't know if your field has kind of crossed this bridge or not, but I know, some mosquito control was, PFAS was found in the, matrix of mosquito control agent. And we're finding PFAS in all sorts of things where we don't anticipate. And PFAS is that, I'm assuming you're familiar, the perfluorinated compounds that are contaminating our drinking water supply and just kind of all over the place. And so I became aware that it was unexpectedly found in one of the common mosquito sprays that Massachusetts disperses all over the place. And so I was just wondering if in your field, has that come to light at all? Is there testing? Are you able to verify with the manufacturer that they've done testing? Because I think, a lot of times what's happening is it's not supposed to be there, but it's so ubiquitous that it ends up there anyways. And so the concern would be if we're applying herbicides to our surface water, I would want to do our due diligence to make sure that, specifically, especially with Spec Pond, where we already know we have an issue. So I was wondering if you could say if that's something you've looked into, or if not, I would request that you look into it, because I think just moving forward with your field, it would be important to know.
So you're asking if we are aware that there's PFAS in the aquatic herbicides?
Into it.
No, I haven't, and I will certainly do that. But no, I haven't heard of that. So I'm sure, like a lot of the herbicides used with mosquitoes, the aquatic herbicides go through the same type of registration process at the federal level with the EPA, and then in the state of Massachusetts with the Department of Agriculture and Department of Environmental Protection all review these herbicides. We do also have to get a permit to use these products, the specific brands and quantities, dose rates. We have to get an annual permit with DEP. So, but no, I haven't heard that question before, but it's definitely something I'm assuming the answer is no, but I will definitely follow up and check on that.
Okay. Yeah. So I think the important thing to ask is, that I think there are a lot of stopgaps, but our regulations are really just catching up. So, a lot of the stopgaps that you mentioned are, they're good practices, they're in place for a reason, but the EPA, for example, it has a guidance value for PFAS. It still actually has not officially recognized PFAS as a contaminant, and they're working on that. So I just wanted to point out that there are some gaps. You think you've gone through all these processes and it, helps from a liability standpoint, but there are, meaningful gaps in the process. And so calling the manufacturer and asking the question, because and they don't expect it to be there, and they just check a box.
So it was like what was considered an inert ingredient in the mosquito pest? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Understood. Yeah, we'll definitely look into that.
Okay, thank you.
I was also wondering, I know Long Pond has, I think it was last year, the first time that a possible cyanobacteria or other algal bloom was what occurred on the property. And I was wondering, do you have contingencies for newly occurring blooms like that, or is that something that we'd address in a different way?
Well, ideally, the best thing to do for algae blooms is to kind of look at what might be causing them. So in almost all cases, it's usually kind of an increase in phosphorus levels, which is, that and nitrogen are kind of the two main kind of key nutrients for algae. And usually phosphorus is the limiting nutrient. It's in the shortest supply. So as that creeps up, due to development and pollution, it can sometimes cross a threshold where it can start to increase the frequency and severity of blooms. So, if in the event of a harmful algae bloom, we do have options available to treat the bloom itself with like copper algicides, but obviously that's more of a reactive type of approach. Ideally, if you're starting to see more frequent algae blooms on the lakes and ponds, then you need to kind of step back and potentially either look at data that you have or conduct a study and try to look at your phosphorus levels and see if they've been going up and where that phosphorus may be coming from, and try to address that with watershed management. I don't need to tell you folks about that. I mean, you know why you're protecting, and regulating activities in the watershed, because if they can hurt the lakes and ponds, and but some of it is global warming. We have more generally higher water temperatures, and that also favors growth. So, and you can also have the years and decades of old nutrients that kind of build up on the bottom of the lakes and ponds that can start to get back into, can kind of internally load and kind of create their own loading from the legacy deposits at the bottom of the pond. So, there is options to do algicide treatments if needed, just for safety's sake, for people recreating and swimming in the ponds. But, I would recommend that if it's starting to be a concern on Long Pond, that, you might want to start to consider monitoring water quality more closely, or, kind of taking all the data that you may already have and kind of doing a nutrient evaluation.
Yeah, we have been monitoring, or the water department has been monitoring phosphorus. Yeah.
That's what I figured. Yeah, so it'd be good to maybe do, if they haven't already, kind of do some trend lines over the years, and
yeah, it's already impaired by phosphorus already. Yeah.
Any more questions? I assume we want to move forward with this. Somebody want to make a motion?
Amy, any hesitation for a 3-year commitment? Okay. I move that we issue a 3-year extension for Long Lake, Speck Pond, and Doleful Pond.
For your second,
Second.
Carl?
Yep. Carl Melberg, aye. James Pickard,
James Pickard,
Sarah Seward,
Sarah Seward, aye.
Julie Rupp,
Julie Rupp, aye.
Andrew Samarco,
Andrew Smarco, aye.
Kyle Maxfield.
Maxfield, aye.
That's unanimous.
Great. Thank you, folks. Have a good evening.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.
I guess we go back to informal discussions. PM, Pan Am, RDA, sidewalk quarry. Amy?
Yeah, they're coming in with an RDA that you'll actually see on the 12th. And I don't know if you wanted a site walk which I was going to try to set up ahead of time if that's the case. I did do one when they were last time they were in, so I don't know if he felt the need for another one. Still haven't been able to schedule the one for Keolis yet.
Is that going to take a special permit as far as you getting escorted along the tracks?
Yeah, and I had to do the certification course, so I did that.
So what you're asking is whether we want to take the time to.
Yes, I wasn't sure since it was done recently, if you thought it was worth it or just wait until after the 12th and see what they have to say.
Let's see what they have to say.
Yeah.
Okay. Other updates and administrative discussion. I guess Sarah brought up 2 or 3 things.
Right. The first was Amy's update on the selectmen, and the second was if we can peer into the continued later 40 issues that are there, if there's any of those that we can just kind of start to move on, whether it's enforcement orders or certificate of compliances. So that way we don't end up on 3 pages because we're almost off of 2 pages.
So long.
I don't want to change the font any smaller.
That is a long list. I was wondering.
I know. So, Amy, let's do the selectmen's update first. Seems
Yeah,
like
that's the
hours
easy
ago.
one. So there were 2 things on there. One was for the proposed trail across town forest and Hergay properties, since those are not conservation lands, and a yellow trail by the Scout, and then a potential red loop by the land stewards, and they approved that. And the second one was to approve the license with the abutter at 145 Tehadawon next to Brown's Woods for the Phragmites control. So we can get the entire patch, not just what is on town property. And they also approved that. Stan and Susan Shea own that property, and they're willing to sign the license. And I hope to have the notice of intent submitted to me by early next week. So you'll be seeing that on the 12th also.
And also be advertised too, right?
Yeah, it'll have to be advertised. It's already been in the environmental monitor, which is required for a project like this. So a butter notification, the whole 9 yards. I'm almost thinking about pulling these because it's going to get busy, is preparing RDAs for all of the trails and boardwalks that might be done either this year or the next 3 years. And I was thinking I'd do them all at once and save like almost $1,000 in advertising fees, because it's stupid expensive to notice these all. And if I can do them all at once, I only pay once.
Right.
So you might see it all.
I appreciate you trying to save money.
Sorry, Sarah?
I said I appreciate you trying to save money.
Oh, that'll get us like another 40 feet of boardwalk. And Lowe's has a grant out nationwide, so I'm holding absolutely no hopes, but I'm putting in for a grant for a boardwalk.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Just see what happens there, but
right.
It's worth asking.
I was wondering that. I saw it said to forward to CPC, and I didn't see conservation, and I meant to ask.
Oh, it's been bouncing around all over the place.
Okay, that makes more sense. So I guess, do you need us to write too?
It's nothing. I mean, the application is why do you want to do it 250 words? Who is it going to serve 250 words? And what's so great about Littleton 250 words?
Okay.
I can do that. And then are you $0 to $50,000, 50 to 100? Like, oh, I can do that. And so, I mean, it's a 15, well, it's more than 15 minutes, but
right.
I'm assuming everybody in the country is going to be chasing this. So
right.
Who knows?
You never know.
But you don't need multiple people to submit for the same project? That sounds confusing. I'm guessing they don't want that. Or if they do you want to send us the language and we can all send it?
We'll just do
Yeah, flood the airwaves.
No, I believe I could submit for more than one project, but more than one person cannot submit for the same project.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's one.
So.
Yeah, you're right.
I can see that would get confusing. I saw the email and I meant to follow up and didn't. So thank you.
I sent a little email out to see if the Cultural Council and Historic might want to team up to do something at Browns Woods. And I didn't hear anything back. And frankly, I don't think we'd have enough, be asking for enough money to make it worth Lowe's time.
Right.
To do like, a kiosk and some signage and clean up.
Right.
The, so.
Yeah, they're going to want to put their big logo on whatever they do. So, okay.
They can logo all they want.
Right.
Those boardwalks.
Okay.
That
it with the select.
The easiest solution to this is I'll just take them off the agenda.
Right. Let's just look at if we can jump kind of halfway down to enforcement orders. We've got Colonial, we've got more. Anything coming through on those?
They should both probably be finished when they get to do their, early summer monitoring report.
Okay. So we'll keep those on. Any of these certificate of compliances that we can help take it off your list that one of us can go out and look if there's something or
Durkee Farm is their reawakening. I kind of send them an email every so often, and they're looking to get out of Durkee, so they're focused. And most of the rest of these, frankly, are waiting for grass to grow.
Oh, okay.
But you have to mention them because it's an ongoing.
It doesn't even have the first part, the continued public hearings. Don't even necessarily have to be on there. I had started putting these on because some of them sat for so long, I forgot about them.
Yeah, no, I think we all appreciate keeping that on. It keeps it fluid. But if there's anything that we can help take off your load with all of this, we're happy to go out and do some certificates ourselves.
Yeah, it's a scary list. April 12th. If you guys start issuing order conditions on April 12th, like that's where I'm gonna need the help.
Right.
Come in and do some mailings.
Right.
And I don't know what's going on with 195 Tehadawon. They're just.
Is that lawsuit still going on?
It's still going on. I don't know if they're slowed down because of the appeal. Bruce is, trying to push it, but he's not getting much traction right now.
Right. Well, it's probably better for us if that's not pushed. So.
And I just reminded him that they are by no means done with you guys. So.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
If there's.
Amy, did you quick question for Amy? Did you, after our site walks this week, did you make it up to 38 Harwood? Did you check in on that site?
Yeah, I did. And Rich Watson said that he had the guy come in to clear some trees, and he got a little enthusiastic. Yeah, he did.
That's what I was afraid of.
Mostly just because he hasn't recorded the order conditions yet, but he picked up the original. It had come back from the certified mail. It bounced. So he's getting that certified. So, yeah.
Okay.
Nothing of concern that they clear cut that entire backyard or anything like that?
The ground wasn't really, that disturbed and stuff. So they're moving along and taking care of it. So, I basically told him, if you don't get this thing at least recorded, I'm gonna have to issue an enforcement order, which I don't want to do right now. So he's on it.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see some of you on Wednesday. You can.
And the vernal pools were hopping Thursday night, had about 30 or 40 people out there.
Cool.
So it was a big crowd.
Yeah, I saw someone's been posting updates in like the various Facebook, like gardening Facebook groups, and I don't know if it was on the trails or not, but yeah, it sounds like Arlington Road though could use a little help.
Yeah, which I've always noticed. It's also that's a busy, tough road.
Yeah.
We go back to one thing.
Yep.
Debbie Frazier. What was the story with the post and was there signage or something on that?
He wanted to move the conservation posts, and I just kind of said no, and we're not talking about it tonight.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I was trying to figure out what it was all about.
Yeah, he wanted to know I said those are surveyed points. You can't move them. If you want to, it's going to be a whole discussion. So.
And then we're going to blaze them orange if you touch them permanently. So,
okay.
All right.
I'd like a motion to adjourn if somebody would want to make one.
So moved.
Yeah, come up with the time though. It is 9:54.
54.
You're
Oh, but I
correct,
also,
Sarah.
has anyone heard from Brian? Did they have their baby? I'll have to send him an
I
email.
don't know. We'll have to send him a
We
group.
can do a virtual card.
Yeah.
I'll take a snapshot of us.
We need a second.
Go ahead, Carl.
You can
Julie
do
got
it
it.
yourself, Carl.
I've seconded all night. I'll second again. Why not?
All right, Carl.
Andrew, you're
Carl
slacking.
Melberg,
What are you talking about?
He moved.
Carl Melberg, aye. James Pickard,
And stick it out.
Sarah Seward,
Sarah Seward, aye.
Julie Rupp,
Julie Rupp, aye.
Andrew Smarco,
Andrew Samarco, aye.
Kyle Maxfield.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Unanimous to adjourn.
No one even made note that it was like the first days of spring officially.
And it was great out there.